welcome to the Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Hey, you guys. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Check this out. Here's something like you didn't know, is that my last 3 episodes, I kind of batched them. My gal was going on vacation. I think I told you this last time. So I had to like boom, 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 bang out like a few episodes. So I haven't recorded a new live episode in a couple of weeks, and I'm feeling kind of excited right now. I'm not going to lie. I've missed talking to you guys. And so this is episode, I want to say 21 of the Kenney Show. And this is what we're going to talk about today, you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about spiritual companionship, spiritual fellowship, your spiritual friends, right? The people you hang with. And I'm going to explain to you why this topic is important, okay? So number one, oh my God. So number one, let me just say, I'm feeling kind of nice. I'm feeling like a little California blonde. I have to give a little shout out to my friend Jessica Todd of Jessica Todd Salon. Don't you just love when you have wicked talented friends and people that you love and respect and you want to do shout outs for all the time? So I always take the opportunity to do that when I can. So feeling funky fresh due to Jessica Todd. So I just want to say thanks about that. All right, here's the thing about spiritual fellowship, spiritual companionship, spiritual community, why it's wicked important. So this is what I know. When you are trying to change your life, when you are trying to change yourself, when you are trying to step into the truth of who you are, which is a way of saying removing the blocks and the barriers and the bullshit, right, that you have put in the way to your own awareness of love's presence, to your own awareness of who you are. And when you're trying to do this kind of work, it is important. It's hot up here in my closet, as you can see. I'm like fixing my shirt here. It is important to surround yourself with people who are on a similar journey, people who are also trying to do that work, people who have a little spiritual stamina. You know what I'm saying? Having a little bit of support. So my amazing teacher, you guys know, you always hear me talk about my spiritual team, and that'll be an episode for another day. But one of the head honchos on my spiritual team is my meditation teacher, Ishwaran. And Ishwaran is dead. He's been dead for a long time. But I've learned so much from him over the past 18 to 20 years through reading his books and through watching his videos and for getting his monthly, now quarterly newsletters. They get mailed to my house, and I often gift them to my students and to my clients. Ishwaran's presence in my life has really, really, really altered my life. He is a really humble, and I still talk about him in the present tense, because to me, he's very much alive in my life, even though his body is dead. He and his teachings and his wisdom and his love live on. So I talk about him in the present tense. So he is very much alive in my life, and his wisdom is very much alive in my life. And one of the things that he talks about, and I'm going to share this with you guys. So those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm holding up a book right now called Passage Meditation by Ishwaran. And he says, train your mind and find a life that fulfills. Amen to that. I talk about it all the time. If you can train your mind, you can pretty much do anything. So this book is called Passage Meditation, A Complete Spiritual Practice. And I'm going to read a little tiny section from this in a moment. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of who he is and why spiritual. He calls it spiritual fellowship. I often call it spiritual companionship. So here's one of the things that he said a long time ago that always stuck with me. he was talking about when you are trying to make big changes in your life, when you're trying to basically bump up against the ego mind, right? The mind that believes in separation, when you're trying to bump up against your character and your habits and all those things that maybe aren't your highest self, okay? The things of this world. He says, when you're trying to make really big changes, okay, in your life through your spiritual practices, it's really wicked important and helpful. He didn't say wicked, I did. It's really important and helpful to have others around you who are also like doing that work and are also on that journey. And so he talked about it like this. He gave this example one time. So I think about like salmon swimming upstream, right? They're going against the current. So not only are they going against the current of like nature, because the water is flowing downstream and they're swimming upstream, which already makes it hard. We can equate that to as human beings when we are swimming against the ego's predilections and the ego's desires, I should say. It is literally like swimming against the grain and going against the course in the nature of this illusionary world. Right? If you've ever tried to make some really big changes, you can tell that not only are you going to bump up against yourself, your bullshit thinking, your bullshit stories, your laziness, your like self-sabotage, your what's the thing when you push things back, when you procrastinate, like all those things, right? So if we're going to try and make really big changes in our lives, and we think of ourselves as like these salmon that are swimming upstream against the current, right? You want to have some wicked strong swimmers along beside you. And he says, and you definitely want to have a leader, that lead fish, who is not going to give up, who is going all the way, who will not be stopped, right? So you want to be swimming with a group of really strong swimmers. And this is what I think about, and have a strong leader. And the strong leader, let's be clear, is what I would point to as your inner teacher. Sometimes for a while, it might be an outer teacher, a mentor or a coach or a therapist or a priest or somebody, a teacher, right, who is showing you some skill sets, some tools, and showing you the way. But no outer teacher could ever surpass or be stronger or greater than your inner teacher that the divine has provided you. And you can call that spirit. You can call that Holy Spirit. I call it sometimes your spiritual team. I call it that a lot. You could call it Jesus. You could call it the inner voice. I don't care what you call it. You call it God, the voice within you, the remembrance of God's love, right? But what I'm saying is, when you're trying to make these changes, you want to be surrounded by others who are also committed and dedicated to putting in some time, some energy, some faith, right, in this process of the spiritual practice. This is why it's called spiritual companionship. These aren't just your friends you get shit-faced with at the bar. These aren't your girlfriends that you drink wine with and bitch about your husbands or your girlfriends or your sweeties or your kids or your job or whatever the thing is. These are people who are aligning their minds like with the truth of themselves and the truth of you, who are not going to let you just kind of get away with bullshit stuff. They're going to be the ones who say, I see what you're doing here. I see what's going on. You look like you're struggling. What's happening? How can I help? They're also going to say that that shit you pulled is uncool and it's beneath you. What's going on? They're also going to say, hey, we're meditating like on the daily. If you want to come over and join our little meditation group. You know what I'm saying? Hey, we have a prayer circle tonight. Like we're going to get together. Hey, Sangha, it's sometimes called Sangha in spiritual and yoga communities, right? So you want to surround yourself. And I'm going to read a little bit from this because this is wicked important because I can't tell you how many people that I know feel like their spiritual community, they either don't have one at all or they used to belong to one and it got weird or it got kooky or cultish. Or the one that they've been in no longer is a good fit. They don't feel like they belong at their church anymore. They don't know if they were ever felt invited or included at their church. That their church doesn't allow for diversity of thought. You're not allowed to question, right? There's so many reasons why spiritual companionship and spiritual community can be lacking or missing, not present anymore for a lot of people. So I want to just read a tiny bit of this. So one of the reasons why I love this book, this is one of the game changers in my life. Okay. I've read every single one of Ashwaran's books. Passage Meditation. This is like the heartbeat So passage meditation is basically his system that he created of meditation, but it's really a whole, it says right here, it's a complete spiritual practice. So there's 8 steps, there's 8 points, right, in the passage meditation Ashwaran program. And so I try to live by all of them. Number 7 though, point 7, right here, spiritual fellowship. So I'm just going to read this for a sec, you guys. So like, get comfy here. So Sanskrit is the language that you hear a lot in yoga, right? It's from the East Indian. Okay, listen. In Sanskrit, there's a pithy saying that was on the tip of my grandmother's tongue every year when school began. So his granny, his grandmother, who he always says was a uneducated woman, but his spiritual teacher. Like education in school was not necessary for what she taught him, okay? So he's saying there's a saying in Sanskrit that was on the tip of my grandmother's tongue every year when school began. At the end of the day, I would run home and tell her who I'd been with and what we had done that day. You don't have to tell me who you've been with, she would say. I can tell. And he would say to his granny, all right, Granny, who? And she would proceed to name every one of them, and she was always right. Granny, I would ask in amazement, how did you know? And she would reply in Sanskrit, Samsaragad Dashguana Bhavanti, which means roughly, we become like those we hang out with. Ooh, listen to that. We become like those we hang out with. Okay, Granny wasn't one to waste words, so it was only when I learned to meditate that I began to understand what she was trying to tell me. Much more than words or behavior, she was talking about character, the influence or influences on the mind that shape the kind of person we are becoming, for better or for worse. And according to this ancient Sanskrit saying, what is good in us and what is bad in us, our strong points and our weak points alike, develop, check this out, you guys, develop because of constant association. So when we associate with calm people, we become calm. And when we associate with agitated people, we become agitated. When we frequent the company of people who are wise, you guessed it, we become wiser. And when our company is otherwise, we become otherwise too. So it should be no surprise, Ishwaran says, then, that an essential part of spiritual life is joining together with those who are spiritually minded, those who want to promote our growth and who want us to promote theirs. You guys, are you hearing me? So our whole life is our spiritual life. This includes the people that you surround yourself with. These are the people that you choose to play a role in your life. And I was thinking about this, especially because one of my beloved childhood friends, Mani Saida, Mani and I know each other because I dated, she comes from a really big family, okay, of Irish kids and Italian kids, Sicilian kids, right? Really big family. And when we were kids, they were together all the time for all the holidays, birthday parties, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And I was dating her cousin. I dated her cousin, Bobby, for like 3 years in high school. So I got to know these kids around the time I was like 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever. And Mani and I became thick as thieves, and we lived together in Boston. Oh, the stories we could tell. So I went to BU. Mani went to Emerson. I was a year ahead of her. I graduated a year before her. She had an apartment in Boston. So after I graduated from BU, I had to go find an apartment, which I did. Long story short, I ended up living in Mani's apartment, like crashing on her futon like 5 days a week. It started off like a weekend here, weekend there. So we ended up living together. Long story short, Mani was, when she went to Emerson has a wicked good, what do you call it? Work placement program, okay? So kids would get out of college and they would get set up with these really cool gigs. And so she got a gig to intern at CBS in Los Angeles. So here you have 2 masshole kids, like 2 kids from Boston. She's moving to LA and she says to me, do you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. So that's how I end up in LA. Okay. So Mani starts off as just like a showrunner or whatever she's doing, fetching coffee or whatever at Young and the Restless, the soap show, the soap opera show. And Mani was on that forever, and she slowly made her way up the ranks. She became the casting director at Young and the Restless, and she's now currently the casting director, I want to say, at Days of Our Lives. So Mani, the reason why I'm telling you this whole story about Mani is Mani just won her second Emmy for casting daytime TV production. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing when you see your childhood friends, oh my God, do incredible things in the world. And I was so wicked excited. So Mani just won her second Emmy. I'm so proud of her. And the day that she won, and I saw her holding her Emmy, and I saw it online, and I looked it up on the news, and I got to see it, and she was getting interviewed, and I watched her videos, and it was just beautiful. It was so much fun. I'm so proud of her, and I love her so much. But I was also just thinking about how she casts people in the perfect role for that show, whether it's for that scene or that episode or for the whole season, right? Or whatever it is. And I was just thinking about, like being able to cast the perfect person in the perfect role. And then it occurred to me, well, we are casting our own lives all the time. Like when we were kids, casting was forced on us. This person's going to play your mother. This person's going to play your father. This person's going to play your cousin. This person's going to play your second grade teacher, right? When we're little kids, we're kind of powerless about the casting in our life. We are stuck with those fucking characters no matter what, for good or for bad, right? These are the foster parents. This is your physician. This is your local priest. This is the guy at the gym school teacher, like whatever. Like these characters are just kind of a lot of times inflicted upon us. We don't get to choose them. But here's the amazing thing about being an adult is we get to cast people in our lives. We get to choose who's going to play the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the lover, the best friend, the people you hang out with. So we get to start to like cherry pick and decide. And what's fascinating, and we could go into this a little more deeply another time, is that we are always casting the roles and assigning the roles to people. And this is a fascinating thing about this, is we often assign roles to people in our minds. We're not even consciously aware of the fact that we're fucking doing it, but we assign somebody the role and then they perfectly play their role and then we get pissed at them. And I'm like, we have to remember all the time that we are the writer of the screenplay. We are the director. We are the casting director. We are the one who kind of sets the scene. What do they call that? The artistic director. We're the cinematic person. We're the person who finds the location. We're the location director. And we are also the one starring in the role. Big shocker. We make ourselves the special star of the after school special that we're shooting all the time, the big drama that we're shooting all the time. So we're constantly casting our lives with characters, new characters to replace the old characters. We don't like that character. We kind of kill them off, don't we? We kick them off the show. We kick them off the island. We assign them a new role. So they go from being your sweetie to being your ex. They go from being this to being that, right? So it's this fascinating thing. So here's my whole point, and we're back. Here's my whole point. If we have the power to be casting who plays roles in our lives, why aren't we casting ourselves a group of people, of spiritual partners, spiritual friends, spiritual community, spiritual, what do I want to call it? Yeah, spiritual community. Your companions, your fellowship, right? That's one of the most powerful groups that you could like put in place. And whether you're finding those people at your local yoga studio, at your church, at your meditation place, at your synagogue, at your temple, maybe you guys are having like whatever religion or no religion or all religion, like whatever your thing is, it's really important that you have people around you, because as Ashwaran's granny, and this is what's so fascinating, Ishwaran's grandmother was his spiritual teacher, which also makes her my spiritual teacher. And anybody who's a student of Ishwaran, that lineage has been passed down from this powerful little woman who used to just like sweep and chant mantras, you know what I mean? Like her mind was legit on point and aligned with God, aligned with the divine, aligned with source in love, in spirit. And I get to reap the benefit of that. So we also want to surround ourselves with other people who are interested in committing to contemplative practices. We want to be around other people who are interested in spiritual reading, who are interested in bigger spiritual principles. And whether that's from your childhood, really, like I was a Catholic kid, I was raised a Catholic kid. Story for another day. But I also have been around, you know, I've been in the yoga world for over 25 years. You know, I've been a student of A Course in Miracles and a guide of A Course in Miracles for over 26 years. I've been a student of Passage Meditation for a wicked long time. I'm a certified spiritual mentor, right? So I've got some skin in the game in the spiritual world. I've been working on myself. And what that really means is I've been kind of letting go more and more and more of all of my beliefs in separation and all of my beliefs in sickness and in smallness and in scarcity and in sin. And one of the most powerful things of A Course in Miracles is, you know, Course in Miracles doesn't believe in sin. Sin means literally like a lack of love. It means a mistake. It means to, like, it's an archery term, like archery, like, you know, arrows. It means to simply to miss the mark. So through my, you know, years now, I'm 50 years old now, and I've been a certified spiritual mentor now for like, Jesus, what's it? I can't even believe it, like 6 years. But I was mentoring people way before that. But I just kind of, you know, made it official and got some skin in the game and invested in a program so that I could feel really good about knowing that that I cared enough to like put in the time. You know what I'm saying? And so here's the thing I'm trying to say is that I want to invite you guys into starting to think about how are you casting your life? Who are the spiritual journeymen and women who go with you? Who is holding you to this vision of who you really are? Like when A Course in Miracles says, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Who in your life is helping you to remember this? Who are those other salmon that are swimming upstream against the ego's nature of selfishness? Do you see what I'm saying? Is this making sense? Double amen hands if you hear what I'm saying, because I know that having a spiritual community has been invaluable to me. I mean, it's just fucking priceless, you guys, to have people around you who are also interested in doing this work. And one of the things that has made me kind of sad is like I've noticed lately, and by lately I mean like the past 10 years or more. So what I've noticed lately is that for a lot of people, how do I say this? As a yoga teacher for a really long time, let me say it this way. As a yoga teacher for a really long time, I've often heard people say to me, you know, coming to your classes is kind of like going to yoga and to therapy and to church all at once. And they would jokingly text me like, you know, if they couldn't get to class, they'd text me and say, I can't make KK church tonight. And I would start to laugh. It's like, preach, right? But when I talk about preaching, I'm not talking about like preaching, like wagging my finger at you. It's like, so even in my yoga classes, people were coming, even though they were physical yoga classes, people were coming, they would say to me, just to hear what I had to say that day. And I started to think about, why are they coming to yoga class, right? To get that spiritual hit. And that wasn't like a bad thing. I thought it was a good thing. It just made me curious, like, you know, what's changing? Because back in the day, a lot of it is you got your spiritual hit from going to church, right? You got your spiritual hit from worshiping in a different way. And I just started to kind of see this influx in this really big, I mean, the yoga world exploded over the past 15 years, like blew up. And one of my theories about this is because people were searching for another way to connect to source. People were looking for another way to connect to spirit, to their true selves, to God, to love. Because a lot of people were leaving the church. And one of the other things, and they're leaving the church for, you guys, there's 1,000 reasons why. and whether they weren't liking what they were seeing, right? You know, all the stuff, the pedophilia with the priests and stuff like that, whether it was they were starting to get frustrated that women can't become priests, whether you're from LGBTQIA community where you didn't feel like you belong, that your kind wasn't welcome there, or maybe you never felt welcome there, never mind not welcome anymore. Maybe you just started to question like some of the shit that was being sermoned at you, you know what I'm saying? So I slowly just kind of started to notice that people were looking for spiritual connection in new ways. And one of the things, like I kept hearing people say, and I still do to this day, I said, you know, I've heard I'm doing air quotes, I'm a recovering Catholic so many times now that it fucking starts to like physically hurt to hear it. I'm just like, when I hear that. Because often what they mean is I no longer play that, like I'm not participating in that whole Catholic thing, which often means like they're no longer going to church, right? And one of the things that I noticed is, and look, you don't have to go to church to be a Catholic, I'm just saying, right? It's usually part of the rigmarole of the whole thing. But what I started noticing is that as people were leaving the church, they were also leaving God behind too. And I jokingly say it's like throwing out baby Jesus with the bathwater, right? They're like, okay, I had enough of that shit. We're going. Let's pack the bags, kids. We're out of here. And I'm just like, oh, man, because I know how much different life is when you feel like you have to do it all on your own and you feel like you have to figure it all out on your own. I just know the difference of moving through the world with having some sort of faith, some sort of faith tradition, some sort of spiritual practice, something that anchors you, something that can be a guiding light, something that can be like the voice of the inner teacher, an internal compass that guides you, that inner GPS, which I often say GPS means God's pretty smart. And it was just kind of like, I was like, just kept getting these hits of like, well, if people don't want to, go to a big organized religion anymore, I just hope that they find their people. I hope that they find the books. I hope that they do spiritual reading. I hope that they do spiritual practices. I hope that they find their Sangha. I hope that they find their meditation group. I hope that they find their way back home to God and to themselves. And most important part, to what that word even means. I'm air quoting, like the air quote of what does God mean to them? I know what it means to me. I'm wicked clear on that. And to a lot of people, because a lot of people I know didn't grow up. They didn't grow up with any faith traditions or spiritual traditions. They didn't grow up with any religion. They didn't grow up with anybody, you know, they didn't grow up with anything that they had to quote unquote recover from. They haven't even discovered it, never mind recovered from it, right? So there's so many people, you guys, I just know because I talk to people. I mean, part of the work that I do as a spiritual mentor is helping people to cultivate, to deepen, to discover their own personal relationship with God, like cutting out the fucking middleman, you know, and finding out for themselves, and to do it in a supportive place, a safe, non-judgmental place where people can connect. So you're casting the roles of these people in your life. So I want you to just pause for a moment. Let's take a breath together, you know, and ask, who in my life is part of my spiritual companionship? Who is part of my spiritual fellowship? Who are these strong swimmers that are going against our selfish and self-centered and like, you know, the belief of separation? Who here is swimming and walking along beside me to break down these stories that don't serve us? Like, who is part of my spiritual, not just team, but my human embodied, like in the body, in the illusion here? Who are my people who are walking this path with me? And I think knowing who these people are, right? Calling them in, whatever language you want to use, discovering them, seeking them out, calling them in, creating them is so wicked important. So you guys, here's what I'm thinking about. So I'm always listening for how can I be most in service to the divine? And if you know me at all, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, if you've known me as a yoga teacher, if you've known me as a Course in Miracles teacher, then you know that I say a prayer from Course in Miracles every single day, the same prayer. I say it multiple times, sometimes a day, depending on if it's time for me to speak or if I have a coaching call, because I never want I never want the insane part of my mind to be driving the bus, right? Because if she is, right, if Vicky with 2 Ks from Lawrence is driving the bus, and we'll talk about her another time, then we're in fucking trouble, okay? So every day I say, please have me go where you would have me go, have me do what you would have me do, have me say what you would have me say, and to whom. And then here's the key piece too. Please use me. I ask to be shown where to go, what to do, what to say, and to whom, and then please use me. So I'm always asking to be of service. I'm always asking for, you can call it guidance, you can call it your individual curriculum, you can call it your daily instructions, all right? I no longer make decisions by myself because it's not smart to do that. I call in the big wigs, the big guns to get support. So I'm always listening. I know I'm so fidgety with my hair right now, you guys, because I'm so hot in this closet. Holy Jesus. Okay. Okay, so I asked them for some insights, and I'm always trying to pay deep attention. I'm always trying to pay attention to not only what I need to learn and hear and work on. I'm always trying to look at how I can be helpful to others and add value. So my spiritual team basically dropped something into my mind. You can call it a divine download. I would call it, like, whether you call it, again, individual curriculum. I got my assignment. Okay, I got my assignment, and it was like, what? And I had been thinking about this thing. And then I got confirmation from my friend Licia, who was on last week's episode. And Licia, as you know, if you listened, is a retired psychic, okay? So she gets hits like all the time. And she's always jokingly saying how like fucking loud my spiritual team is. She's like, you're a spiritual team. She goes, A, they're really pushy and bossy. It sounds about right. And she goes, they swear. She's like, they're pretty aggressive. And we were like laughing. I was laughing so hard. So she kind of like confirmed it to me. So basically, here's what happened. I got this divine inspiration to create a safe space where people of all religions and no religions, people who are finding their way back to God or discovering whatever God, quote unquote, means to them for the first time. I just felt like there was a need for a safe place for people to come together in spiritual companionship, spiritual communion, spiritual community, in contemplative community, to start to talk about things of the spirit, to start to talk about, things that are important. Do you know what I'm saying? And for people to have a safe place to discover for themselves what it means for them to have a one-to-one personal relationship with the divine. And I'm like, well, I can't build a church. I'm not going to build a church. Like, I'm not a priest. I'm not like whatever, right? But I am I try to be a really good assistant to the divine. I try to be really good assistant to God. And so the idea that I got is I want to create a space on Sundays. And I'm like, well, it can't be in person because I want it to be completely inclusive. I want people from all over to be able to join. So here's the idea that I'm dropping in your lap. I'm announcing this. By the time you guys see this, I feel like I'm making one of those things like, if you're reading this right now, I'm dead. Okay, and we're back. By the time you guys see this, I'll have already announced it. But the project that I'm working on, you guys, is called The Sunday Spiritual with Karen Kenney. It's the Sunday Spiritual with KK. And to start, it's going to be a once a month call online on Zoom, on a Zoom call. If you don't know what Zoom is, you can go Google it. It is an online meeting platform. Okay, so it's video. And so people from all over can join in. And I'm going to pick one Sunday a month. Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we all join together in the same place on Zoom. And we get to have these conversations about the spiritual life. I'm wicked excited. And right now, and you can check back to make sure that the date is still stands, but I'm planning to launch my very first one on Sunday, August 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And to sign up, you just have to go to my website, and it is Karen Kenney, KENNEY.com/Sunday Spiritual. And right there, you will find the landing page of how to join, how to sign up, how to come join us. And you guys, here's the best part. It's free. There's no hard pews you have to deal on. There's no passing the basket for money. I mean, look, maybe in the future, if you guys want to donate, I can contribute it to some charity that I love or whatever. But right now, it's just a free gig of just seeing, because my gut instinct is that there is a need for this. There's a desire for this, where people want to get together in spiritual fellowship and in spiritual community and not have all this judgment and exclusivity and whatever. Like, this is a party that everybody gets an invitation to. You're all children of God. And even if you don't like that word, you don't know what I mean by it, don't let the word God freak you out. I use the word God. You can say universe. You can say highest self, higher power. You can call it the light. You can call it the universe. You can call it science. I don't care what you call it. Don't get hung up on the name. What I want you to be is wicked curious about what it is for you, what it means to you, and who are the people that you're going to get to now start to join together in spiritual community. Like, you're going to start to find some of your people who are curious about the same things as you, that question the same things as you, that want to talk about these important things. And I just know that so many people, and I know you guys because I've been talking to people for 20 years about this stuff, about trying to bring these big spiritual concepts down into the everyday life. How do I take these things that we're talked to about in books and that my priest used to say, or my teacher used to say, or this one used to say, how do I actually fucking live it? Like, how do I apply this? And so that's me, down to earth, blue collar spirituality, taking these big spiritual concepts and being able to live them. So going from the mystical to the mundane, like, how do we apply this stuff in our daily life? So it's not just some theoretical thing, like we get some skin in the game and we get to do it together. We don't have to go alone. So that's my invitation to you. I would love if you would show up on the call. You might say, hey, it's not for me, but I know my sister or my cousin or my friend would love this. So, share it, spread it, share this episode, help me to spread the love. And that's really all it's about, you guys, is I get an assignment to be of service, to spread the love in a new way and in a way that just lights me up. I am so jazzed and so excited, and I hope you'll join us. And if you have any questions at all, you can send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook. You can shoot me an email. Go to my website and go to the connect or contact button. Fill out the form. Any questions that you have, just know you can come from all religions, no religion. You can be an atheist. You can be a born-again Christian. I don't care. This isn't about us going to be like forcing dogma on anybody. It's going to be an invitation and an opportunity to listen and to also speak. And you'll just have to come to the first one to see what I'm talking about, to discover it. And if any part of you is curious, if any of this has resonated with you or piqued your curiosity, or something I said landed in your heart from my heart, I hope you'll show up. And so there's no pressure, obviously, like do it or don't do it. It's only for the people that are like, I'm curious. This might even be a shit show, but I just want to see what goes down. I don't think it'll be a shit show. I think it's going to be awesome. I think we're going to have some deep conversations, but I think we're also going to have a lot of fun. Because if you know me, right, one of my big three is humor and laughter and the lightness, right? To become enlightened, it means to lighten up, but it also means to accept once and for all that you are the light of the world. And these are just some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And here's just a little final kind of thing, circling back to casting your life. If you've been casting your life with a cast of characters that need to go, right? This is exactly where having spiritual fellowship and spiritual community can be so helpful, because they can help you to stay strong in the commitments that you make to yourself. Just think about how different your life would be if you started to commit. And look, I talk about daily, dedicated, determined, disciplined, and devoted spiritual practices, like non-negotiable for my life. And it is that way because I know that the discipline is what ultimately leads to the freedom. The discipline is what ultimately leads to the freedom. So what would it be like? And maybe you can't start with daily spiritual practice. You might not be able to start with weekly spiritual practice, but I know somehow, some way, you can start to show up, right? In a collective community, right? In a conscious and contemplated community once a month. and just start there and just start to see how it feels, and if it feels true for you, and if it feels right for you, and if it feels good for you. Because these are the people, knowing that there are other people who are out there who are cheering you on, what I call your balcony people. There are other people out there that are going to help you to hold the vision and the strength of yourself. So when you're trying to make changes, when you're trying to maybe let go of a certain cast of characters, or just that one other person or whatever, to have people who can bolster you and support you and hold the strength and the vision of you and with you, man, is that powerful. I just know, I can only speak from the experiences of my own life, because they're going to hold you to the truth of who you are. And I mean this in a beautiful way. They're not going to come. You know what I'm saying? I just want to invite you into a community of people who are thinking about these kind of things too. You guys also, I'm going to circle back to this passage meditation. I just want to end with something that he says here at the end in Spiritual Fellowship. He talks about lofty companionship, and I love this, and this is how we're going to end this. He says, we also need transcendent companionship. The highest form of spiritual association is with someone who embodies our highest ideals and aspirations, someone we want to be like in every possible way. And he says, it might be Jesus or the compassionate Buddha. It might be a great saint like Sri Ramakrishna or Francis of Assisi, my boy, Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, or Teresa of Lisieux. I'm probably not saying that right. And he says, this does not require a physical presence. Jesus, the Buddha, great sages and saints like Sri Ramakrishna and Mahatma Gandhi, Teresa and Francis of Assisi, they all continue to guide us. They are not dead. Their bodies are gone, but their spirit moves about freely in the world, helping those who turn to them with a unified heart. I love this so much, and this is what we're talking about for the Sunday spiritual that we're creating together. Similarly, my teacher is much more real to me today than she was when I was a child. And as for Francis and Teresa and Jesus, they were friends with whom I conversed intimately. And he says, even for people like you and me, luminous figures like these in every religion can be living companions, much more real and much more influential than flesh and blood. And he goes on to say, wherever people gather for selfless ends, and this is how I see the Sunday spiritual, wherever people gather for selfless ends, there is a vast augmentation of their individual capacities. Something wonderful and something momentous happens, and an irresistible force begins to move, which, though they may not see it, is going to change our world. In this lies the power and the meaning of spiritual fellowship. And this is what we're going for, you guys, spiritual fellowship. And in A Course in Miracles, there's a line that says something, I'm paraphrasing, that when two or more are gathered for healing, I am there. And that when an idea is shared, it grows stronger. And we know this to be true for sure, right? So if a bunch of us are gathering together in service to love, in service to and to discovering our own truths and to understanding what God is for us, you guys just think about how impactful these meetings can be on not just our own individual lives, but the universal lives to the world as a whole. And I want to be a part of that change. And I want to invite you to also be a part of that change. And another little part of the dream is one day to have like the Sunday spiritual live, where we have a live in-person experience. But first we have to see if there's actually, if my gut instinct was right, if the individual curriculum assignment that I received was on point. Because I feel called to offer this, and I hope you feel called. Some of you will answer the call, because it says, of course, in Miracles, God calls everyone, not everybody chooses to answer. So I hope you guys choose to pick up this bat phone and get your asses on the call on Sunday, August 18th. You guys, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I see you, I celebrate you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days. And let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KENNEYLIVE. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.